A warm welcome to the Development Control meeting today on the 2nd of October 2024. Before we begin the formal agenda, I'd just like to draw your attention to the fact that the agenda was issued and it does ask people to put their mobile electronic devices on silent. That's the first thing. The second thing is, members, because we've had the odd problem with the microphones, what our IT people are asking is either to put your phones off or put them onto airplane mode. And that doesn't mean you're going on holiday, Councillor Dicker. That just means it just, again, that just means we just stop any stray electromagnetic interference. So thank you for that. Right, so the meeting will be live streamed on YouTube. So if any member of the public attending the meeting objects to being filmed, please advise us immediately and we will ensure that they are not included in the filming. Although I will stress the public gallery will not feature in the live stream and the public speakers will only be filmed from behind where they are seated and their faces will not be visible. So is there anyone present in the public gallery that doesn't want to be live streamed and shown on YouTube? Okay, thank you very much for that. Members, I'm not sure whether it's now necessary for me to run through the process for the queue to speak. I'm sure we're getting familiar with it now. If anyone gets in a muddle, I will point it out. Charlotte has distributed some conditions that apply to agenda item 8. So we'll have a comfort break between now and agenda item 8, I'm sure. So that'll be time for you to scan through. Right, on the formal agenda then, the first item is apologies, please, Helen.
Chair, we have apologies from councillors Carol Bull, Rachel Hood and Phil Whittam.
Thank you, Helen. And could I see if there are any substitutes? Councillor Lynch. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Bradshaw.
Councillor Bradshaw standing for Phil Whittam.
Thank you. And Councillor Chung.
Councillor Chung, substitute for Councillor Bull, please.
Thank you. Right, I just read this verbatim actually because it's being the fact that we're in a formal meeting. Members, this is agenda item 4, declarations of interest. And members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest, other registerable or non-registerable interests, which they have in any item of business on the agenda, and that should be no later than when the item is reached, and when appropriate to leave the meeting prior to discussion and voting on the item. Are there any declarations at this point? Okay, thank you very much indeed. In that case, we move to the land at Kings Road, Bury St Edmunds, and the presenting officer is Britta. So over to you, Britta. Oh, I beg your pardon. Sorry. What? I skipped to the declarations of interest. Can I just see whether there are any comments or corrections on the minutes, please? Well, I have 3, which should have prompted me to actually. These were pointed out to me by a diligent member of the committee that the present at the last meeting, who are not listed, are Councillors Speed, Armitage and Chung. And they're not listed as being present at the meeting. Are there no more corrections? On that basis then, with that correction, could I see if there's a proposer for the minutes? Councillor London. And is that seconded? Councillor Smith. David Smith, that is. So proposed by Councillor London with the correction and seconded by Councillor Smith. Show of hands, please, in favour of the... Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. The minutes are agreed.
Thank you very much. Now we can go over to Britta. Thank you, Britta.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. So first application today is for 26 dwellings with access, car parking, landscaping and public open space following the demolition of derelict buildings at Kings Road in Bury St Edmunds. The application site is within the settlement boundary of Bury St Edmunds, just southwest of the town centre. The northern part is brownfield land and was last used as stonemasons over a decade ago. The buildings are derelict and proposed to be demolished. These are the buildings in the northern part. And the southern part of the application site was formerly used as allotments. Don't forget to put your laser on for pointing. How do I do that? Okay. Okay, thank you. The site is part of a wider allocated site in the Berry Vision BV10B in the current local plan. However, it should be noted that the site is no longer allocated in the emerging local plan and is expected to come forward as Windfall site. The allocated site is in several different ownerships, which is shown on that little plan at the bottom right here. The pink is the applicant's land. In purple, we have Agrarian Finance, who are letting out garages to local residents. The orange are other private owned land. Blue is West Suffolk Council land, and green is Havebury, although Havebury have got access to their land from the west of Shillitoe Close. The yellow strip across the site is a private right-of-way connecting the garages and the rear garden here with Mill Road to the east. The southern part of the allocated site here is now a designated local wildlife site. And further to the south, we've also got former chalk mines, which I will expand on in a little bit. The applicant has for a long time tried to agree a development brief with the other landowners. However, because of the constraints of the site and development not really being viable to the south of the site, it has not been possible to agree a development brief. For that reason, the applicant has provided with his application an indicative master plan to demonstrate how the application side could in the future or would not prejudice the development of the surrounding land in the future should it become viable at some later point. So there would be potential access through the application side into the into the garage sides and links to the south for vehicular access and pedestrian access linking into Jacqueline Close. Members will remember the site from Monday. Wasn't quite as friendly as in the pictures. So here we've got the front of the site, which is now blocked off with a safety barrier and showing the terraces along King's Road and the slight rise in topography towards the east. And here we've got a view from the other direction, just to show how the scale of the terraces slowly increases towards the east. And a view of the application side with the derelict buildings proposed to be demolished. So this part is part of the conservation area. The undeveloped bit to the rear is outside of it. And I've included one last view of the site from Google Street View in 2009, just to show what the site context was before it was blocked off. So there was a little showroom at the front here with parking for a couple of cars and then access into the site via a gated access. To the front of the site and along King's Road, we've got either single yellow or double yellow lines with residents parking further west and on Victoria Road. Here we've got a view from the access track, which dissects the application side, looking back towards the terraces on King's Road here, and with the buildings on the application side on the side here. That is a view in the other direction with the garage buildings along the side here and the most significant TPO tree on the side, the horse chestnut here. And then I've also included some pictures from the access on Mill Road, which is off the application side. However, the right-of-way gains access from Mill Road and then crosses the application side here. So this is the access looking back towards Mill Road. This is the eastern garage side. This is the view up and down from the Mill Road access to show you the sort of visibility that you would have at this point, entering the site or leaving it. And these are the garages on the western side looking back towards the application side. The entire track is fenced off with the kind of palisade fencing left and right to restrict access onto the adjacent land. The application proposes 10 dwelling houses, 9 3-bed and 1 4-bed, and 16 apartments, of which 6 would be 1-bed and 10 would be 2-bed. There are 2 areas of informal public open space, and initially there was a small pocket park proposed on the western public open space. However, this would not meet current standards and was therefore requested by the Parks team to be omitted in lieu of a financial contribution to play equipment off-site. The application proposes a detached dwelling at the front of the access of the new access road, which is similar in scale to the adjacent terraces and curves into the side. There would be a reasonable rear garden that respects the size of the rear gardens of the adjacent terrace properties, with new proposed terrace buildings along the access road. By the T-junction, the dwellings would curve either side, and again, you would have a second row of terraces here, and opposite, the furthest set into the side, you would have an apartment building, which is 3 stories. All dwellings proposed at the front of King's Road and along the new access road are 2-story. And here we've got a final street view from the rear of the proposed apartment building with balconies for each of the flats looking out onto the southern part of the application site. All apartments, here we've got the floor plans, the western block. The eastern block would be mirrored and identical. So at the top of the access road, we would have a undercroft that takes you through the apartment block to access the parking in a courtyard arrangement. Each flat meets the national space standards and would benefit from balconies. Cycle storage and bin storage will be at the front of the building for easy access by the bin collection crew, as well as people using the cycle storage facilities. And then we've got 4 different house types on the development, with house type number 1 being the detached one on the corner. They're all quite simplistic in design, but using high quality traditional materials and details to enhance and provide variety within the development. House type 2 all of the house types take cue from the conservation area, but are in a contemporary style with clear lines using traditional materials. The material palette has been influenced by the local vernacular, including gold and red brick, with simple details to create variety and distinction between the dwellings. House type 3, as you can see, we've got some arches and bay like projecting base to add variety and visual interest. And finally, house type 4, like I've said, they all meet the national space standards and provide access to the rear gardens for cycle storage, which meets the current standards. Visualizations have been submitted with the design and access statement to help appreciate the scale and appearance of the development. I must point out that these have not been amended in line with the later amendments that we've got. So the footpath on the right-hand side here has later been omitted from the scheme to reduce the hard standing and allow for a wider area for soft landscaping, and because the access on the left-hand side here would be able to serve all of the residents from within the development. Within the application side, we would have a neighbourhood square at the T-junction, and like I've said, 2 informal public open spaces to either side of the apartment block. And lastly, an impression of the apartment building from within the side here, with the second amenity space to the side, and the tree planting in front of the apartments. Sorry. On the right-hand side here, we've got a massing plan to show how the development would sit within its context, with the terraces on King's Road here and 2-storey development on Shillitoe Close to the west here, separated from the application side by substantial planting. Moving on to access and parking and highways matters. The access road is proposed to be a private access of King's Road with a single footpath on the right-hand side. The carriageway would be 5 metre wide and the footpath 2 metre. The application proposes off-site highways improvement, including a speed table at the front of the site, taking into the junction with Victoria Street to slow down any traffic in that area. Every property would be, or the dwelling houses would be provided with 2 parking spaces, and the apartments would be provided each with 1 parking space, and then there would be 7 additional visitor parking spaces. That is slightly below the Suffolk parking guidance, which would require 2 parking spaces per 2-bed and 3-bed unit and 3 parking spaces per 4-bed unit. However, due to the sustainable location, the good access to public transport services and facilities in the town centre, and good cycle provision, the Highways Authority have accepted the reduced parking in this location. Lighting details are still to be determined at the discharge of conditions stage, and would be covered by the lighting condition included in the recommendations. The parking bays for the houses meet current standards. They are 3.5 metre wide with a 0.9 metre clearance for convenient bicycle and bin access. Bin and bike storage for the apartments, like I said, would be to the front, and details for the bike storage for the actual facilities within the storage room would be secured by condition as set out in the late paper. And the private right of access across the side would be retained. It is proposed that bollards are installed on the western and eastern part of the site to restrict the access to the sites to those with the right of access. However, this is a civil matter, and the Highway Authority did not consider anyone potentially passing the garage side on foot would result in a highway safety issue. And therefore, highways would not want to control the use of bollards in this location. Moving on to drainage, surface water and foul drainage. Soakways and discharge to water courses are not feasible on this side. Therefore, in the drainage hierarchy, the only option is to connect to the public sewer system. Anglian Water have been consulted and have accepted the connection to the sewer system. The drainage strategy has been designed to accommodate flows and volumes for the 100-year flat event with no overspill to surrounding areas and allowance for climate change. To allow for all storm cases, stormwater storage is provided in the access road here, highlighted in blue, and that would help to reduce the flows to 2 litres per second. The drainage strategy, like I said, was accepted by Anglian Water and the local flood authority, Suffolk County Council. In terms of foul water drainage, there is room left on the western side of the access road to connect to the existing foul drainage connections on King's Road. And Anglian Water have confirmed that the local foul sewage system have got capacity to serve that development. Now, moving on to the matter of land stability. To the south of the application site and within the wider allocated site, we've got former chalk mines. The chalk workings caused a collapse of dwellings on the ground in the 1960s, and after that the whole area was fenced off. Jacqueline Close development had to be demolished, and ever since the applicant's consultant for land stability was involved in the investigation of the below ground, the land stability matters on this side. For this application, a structural development brief has been prepared by that consultant in support of this application, and the land stability information was then assessed by an independent specialist consultancy, EPS, on behalf of West Suffolk Council. EPS have raised no objection to the mitigation strategy subject to conditions. There's predominantly chalk across the application site, and therefore normal continuous concrete trench foundations will be adopted for the construction. In the southwest corner of the application site, where we've got a group of TPO trees, is a very local intrusion from the Jacqueline Close workings, and then there's another very local intrusion at the second public open space underneath the chestnut TPO tree. And to deal with these, it is intended to fill both these small localized areas of workings from ground level in a controlled stage process. The existing workings will first be plugged at the boundary location using a dry mix to form a barrier, which will be administered from the Hanchett site from present ground level and by using open drilling to avoid any potential damage to the existing trees. The proposed mitigation strategy was considered acceptable by the Council's specialist consultant, and on this basis, it is considered that the land stability matter has been dealt with sufficiently and the details can be secured by condition. In response to the original application, we have received representations from 10 properties and objections from 7 neighbours, raising concerns mostly about highways matters and parking provision as set out in the committee report. The ward councillors echoed those concerns and asked that the application was considered at committee. The Bury Town Council submitted a holding objection to the original submission and suggested further investigation of the chalk mines, raised highways concerns and concerns about waste collection and energy and water efficiency. Subsequently, amended plans and further information, including a highways technical note and additional ecology information, have been submitted, and a full reconsultation was undertaken. In response to the reconsultation, we have received 1 representation and 2 objections. And the Bury Town Council has remained their objection on highways grounds and raised additional comments about sewage and refuse collection and the unambitious design. In terms of consultation responses, we have no objections from any of the consultees, subject to the conditions attached to the recommendation in the officer report. And a late representation has been received yesterday from Councillor Reiner, which repeats the comments and reiterates the concerns raised and set out in the officer report, but I've summarised quickly on a slide here. So whilst the principle of development is welcomed, the primary concerns are around the wider impacts of the dense development on the surrounding area. They are around highways and the scale of the development causing further pressure on the existing highways network. If approved, it was suggested that the access should be carefully considered and a 20-mile speed limit may be considered. And it should be ensured that the accessibility is maintained for residents and buses and that the impacts of the development are mitigated to ensure that the development adds to the whole area. And then one final note that I recommend that a further condition needs to be attached to the decision to secure an affordable housing scheme, because the distribution of the affordable housing has not yet been agreed, and therefore, whilst we have secured in a draft section 106 30% affordable housing to ensure that the tenure and the distribution on site is acceptable, I've suggest that this condition is added to the decision. So to summarise, the principle and the details of the proposal are considered to comply with our local and national policy, and the application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out on page 40 of the agenda pack, and subject to a further condition for cycle storage details and an affordable housing scheme condition, and subject to the completion of a section 106 legal agreement to secure education contributions and affordable housing contributions. 7 units will be provided on site, and a financial contribution would be secured for the 0.8 units. And that is me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Britta. We have one public speaker committee. Is it James Simonson? And you are the agent. So I think you've been briefed. You've got 3 minutes. Thank you very much indeed.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. My name's James Simonson from Turley, speaking on behalf of the applicants Leslie and Morris Sananas. We're pleased to be bringing forward a well-designed development that will deliver 26 new homes, 30% of which will be affordable, alongside new public open space in a well-connected location at the former Hatchet site on Kings Road, part of a wider site allocated for housing under Bury St Edmunds Vision 2031. The applicant has worked for a decade now to bring forward the wider allocation, including this northern parcel within their ownership, along with other landowners. But in lieu of a route forward across the whole allocation, we've collaborated with other landowners, neighbours, officers, stakeholders, and the community to develop a scheme for the northern parcel that has been designed to integrate with and facilitate future phases of development when adjacent owners are able to bring forward their land. We're fully aware of the chalk mining history of the wider allocation, and the extent of the application site and proposed layout specifically avoid the area of chalk mines, which only protrude very marginally to the southern edges of the application site. Where the mines marginally protrude onto the application site, the above ground use will be open space and landscaping, with mines remediated to ensure safety of these open spaces. Extensive survey work has been undertaken and the authority is satisfied with the information provided, with further detail to be secured by condition. We are in a housing crisis, and it's vital that sustainably located sites such as Kings Quarter are brought forward to meet local housing needs and help young people stay in Berry to contribute back to the town's vitality. The proposals have been carefully and sensitively devised to blend with the surrounding neighbourhood character and conservation area through the integration of local materials and design details. The proposals will regenerate a currently vacant brownfield site that in its current state causes antisocial behaviour and fly tipping for local residents. All homes will be built to high sustainability standards, with the potential to include renewable technologies, including PV panels, EV charging points and air source heat pumps, and ample public and private open space for new and existing residents to enjoy. Extensive landscaping, including wildlife-friendly planting, sustainable urban drainage features, including a rain garden and pond, bird and bat boxes, and hedgehog-friendly boundaries will be incorporated into the scheme, and a landscape management ecological plan will ensure the long-term upkeep of open space. We've worked really hard to respond to feedback from stakeholders in the community and have made several changes to improve road safety, increase parking and cycling numbers, ensure existing garage access and enable waste and refuse collection, all of which are further detailed in the fact sheet provided to members. To conclude, Kings Quarter is a result of a collaborative effort between the applicant, stakeholders and the community to ensure the development provides for and benefits both existing and future residents and remains flexible to integrate with future phases of development. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, James. Okay, members, there's no one in the queue yet. Councillor Chester, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have concerns on the land stability, and the case officers touched on this. I'd also given some context, and of the 30 houses originally built in Jacqueline Close in the 1960s, an area just to the south of the proposed site, just 2 houses remain. Much bitter and angerness was caused when 28 houses were demolished as they were deemed unsafe due to collapsing foundations. These houses were built over the former chalk mines, one of several chalk mines in the area.
Councillor
Only
Chester,
2 of the failed houses.
sorry to interrupt you. You're making a speech rather than asking a question.
I'm coming to a question.
Can you come to it a bit quicker, please?
Okay, I can do that a bit quicker. Okay, my concern here was land stability. And if there are many conditions attached to this application, is one of requesting further investigation on land stability. And I seek to know why that can't be brought forward or planning granted once we have that information as opposed to now. That's
Thank you
the
very much
question. I'm
indeed.
quite happy to take advice on officers from that. Thank you.
Yep, no, they'll make a note on that. Councillor Sayer, please. How was your
Thank
voice?
you, Chair. For brevity, can I ask, please, where the solar panels are on this development?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sayer. Councillor David Smith, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just briefly, you mentioned in the report about the yellow lines along the road. I wondered how far they extended, and you mentioned about permit parking as well. Would this development affect or lessen any parking available for permit holders? With the affordable housing, I see there's 4 for rented and 3 for shared ownership. Does that fall in line with our policy? Because I thought we needed a bigger percentage of rented affordable rather than 4 to 3. I think you mentioned about the distribution as well, so that covers that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor David Smith. Councillor Don Waldron, please.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry to harp on, but I just want to follow up on Councillor Chester's comments. Has there been a proper drill pattern over the site to see if there are any voids underneath? Is there any form of backfill suggested if there are voids to support it? And in mitigation, with water in chalk, voids expand. So you can say, okay, we drilled there in 1964 and there's a void, right? We're now 60 years on. Water washes away chalk. How big's the void now? Has anybody checked? I'd just like to know if there's a proper series of drilling over the site to check.
Thank you, Councillor Waldron. Councillor London, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a couple of quick ones, which is we have possible access to the newer part of the development that isn't coming forwards through this development, and I'd just like to make sure that we have legally worked out that there is that access that we can come through, because obviously that's going to be a private road. And then also we have had conversations about 20 miles an hour and yellow lines, etc. Obviously, as a private road, all of that would be under a private contract with a private company. That would not be something that highways would be enforcing. So we are going to have a situation where we have a private road. The ownership of part of that private road is unknown, and I'm just wondering how parking is going to be resolved over that section. Surely if the owner cannot be found for that section and a road has been built over it, if someone was to park there and it was to go to court, that would get thrown out of court because there is no authority to control parking on that land. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor London. Councillor Mildmay White, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I heard the applicant say, or agent say, there was a potential to include more sustainable things like solar panels and air source heat pumps. Does that mean nothing is included at this moment, but it will all be retrospective? Because, you know, moving into our net zero 2030, this seems a little bit backward thinking that everything should be retrospectively fitted rather than fitted at the time of building. So I would expect new buildings coming forward now to include solar and air source heat pumps. My other question is about the bin collections. There doesn't seem to be a turning space for the bin lorries. So presumably they'll be backing onto or off the unadopted road bit at the T-junction. The other question is about the bin storage. I see there's room for 3 bins, but we're actually moving towards a 4-bin storage system. So is the capacity, particularly with the flats, for 4 bins? And I saw that the waste disposal team had been requesting more information about how far the bins were going to be dragged and placed from the houses. So will they all be on the footpath, or is there a space for them to be put in a sort of more community, larger space? So just questions about that. Then when we were on our site visit, there was talk about drainage problems or sewage problems on what is the unadopted road, because I understand the entrance and the road going through the development is not going to be adopted by highways. And there was talk about, and Town Council brought that up too, about the sewage system crossing the road if it's an unadopted road. Could we have a little bit more clarity on that, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mildmay White. I've got Councillor Glossop and no other members, so after Councillor Glossop, I think we'll go back to officers and get some clarification. Councillor Glossop, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, Sarah has raised a lot of the points I was going to raise. I'm a little concerned about not having solar panels in these properties when they're being built now, and all the other environmentally friendly things we should be doing. And I also want to know about the bins and storage, because of all the new regulations we're going to have to follow for recycling. And secondly, I might have missed it in the report, but are there electric charging points being fitted as well, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glossop. Officers, are you okay, or do you want a few more minutes?
I'll try and make a start, yeah.
Okay, Britta's going to make a start. Thank you, Britta.
So Councillor Chester raised the question about land stability and why the investigation hasn't been undertaken at this point. I think, you know, there's certain detail that you will provide at the application stage, like you would do with contamination, but you will get to a point where the works are intrusive and you actually have to spend a lot of money, and you're not doing that before you actually get to a point where you may benefit from planning permission. So we have got the detail to satisfy that the fine detail can be left to condition, and that has been, like I said, reassessed by a specialist consultant. So the NPPF is quite clear that where a site is affected by contamination or land stability issues, the responsibility for securing a safe development rests with the developer and the landowner. So as a local authority, we have, as officers, pushed for as far evidence as possible to make sure that the development is feasible and buildable, but the detail will be secured for a later date.
Excuse me, Chair. I'm just going to add to that because it probably feeds into Councillor Waldron's question as well. So, as part of the consideration of this application, submitted with the application was a report that assessed these proposals in relation to the condition of the land in terms of the site itself and the adjoining land. And we've got to a point with the consultant that we independently then employed to assess that report to a situation where we're content that development can take place on the site. And then if you look at pages 48 to 49 of the report, conditions 21, 22 and 23, they relate to the next elements of the process that the developer would have to go through in terms of ensuring that the land stability issues associated with this site are taken into account. And it's very similar, as Britt has just mentioned, it's very similar to the way that we deal with contamination on sites. So we will very often on a site like this, we'll get a contamination report that is the overarching assessment of what is expected to be found on a site. And then we will condition a requirement for a remediation package and a verification of that remediation once it's taken place, which by definition can only usually happen during the process of the site being developed itself. So we've got enough detail now to be satisfied there won't be an issue, but then we've got belt and braces in terms of the conditions recommended to ensure that once development starts, more work can be done in relation to that stability issue. Thank you. So, solar.
Yeah. Right, in terms of solar panels and sustainable construction and electric vehicle charge points, we have got the general statement of what is intended on the site, which our environment team were happy with, and we have included a condition to secure the details of sustainable construction to be submitted prior to commencement. So the fine detail of where solar panels would be sited, air source heat pumps, etc., would be secured by condition. Electric vehicle charge points are generally now secured by building regulations if the parking is associated with a dwelling, and similarly if parking is associated with flats, it would also be secured by building regulations. It is only on additional parking, like visitor parking spaces, that are unrelated to a specific flat, where we would have to secure by condition. And to ensure that there is overall enough provision, we still have included a condition for details to be submitted. And Rachel just pointed out, is condition 12 that requires the submission of the electric vehicle charge point details. Yes, that's right. And then we've had the question about the ratio and distribution of affordable housing and whether that is the correct mix. So the split and distribution is really based on a housing needs assessment which is undertaken by the strategic housing team, and the mix as included in the officer report is based on the local needs. However, because we haven't got a distribution in this case yet and the 10-year split, we would secure that detail by condition. And there is flexibility. So the Section 106 legal agreement will only secure that the 30% affordable housing are provided on site, and the financial contribution for the 0.8 unit is paid at a certain time trigger prior to occupation, I believe. And then we've had Councillor London ask about access to the surrounding land after the site is developed. So we can only secure the actual layout that would enable access. The actual access over the site would then be a civil matter. So it would then be a matter of the different parties agreeing the access. Speed limit, 20 mile per hour speed limit. It would be something that highways would consider in the highways agreement when the speed table details would be secured. And I don't know whether it would be considered necessary in this location, because traffic is relatively slow because of the narrowness of the road anyway, and the purpose of the speed table is to slow cars from Victoria Road and going up and down King's Road down further. So I don't know whether that would be a consideration for highways. I have not, that has not been mentioned in their responses or in the meetings that we've had with highways and the applicant. Yes, then we've had a query about bin collection and turning and dragging. So the applicant has submitted a swept path plan to show that the bin lorry would be able to turn within the side, and yes, that would be a 3 manoeuvre turn, like it would be if the road was adopted. So the road is wide enough to accommodate the manoeuvres, and we've included a condition to secure that the road is constructed to the standard that can take the maximum load of a bin lorry. And in the site plan, we've also have indicated in red the bin dragging distance for the waste collection crew from the front of the road, from the front of the house to the bin lorry, which is within the acceptable distance as set out in the West Suffolk Waste Guidance. Yes, and then it was the question about the bin storage capacity. For the dwellings, they are being stored at the back of the houses, so there would certainly be space for an additional bin there. For the apartments, I've not got the answer whether, in terms of the timeline, that would have considered the additional storage for food waste. So I don't know if the answer whether that bin storage would be big enough to accommodate that, or whether there would, like in other developments, be a need for an storage facility when that need arises. And electric charging points are covered already.
Drainage issues on the adopted road, it's just covered by Young Water, isn't it?
Yes, and about drainage issues raised. So like I said, the applicant proposes the access road to be private, with the surface water drainage being within the road, the foul drainage would connect to the existing foul water drainage works, and Anglian Water have confirmed that the sewage system and the actual sewage place in Fornham Allstains, I believe that is, have got the capacity to deal with this development. So, yeah, I think that is.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to come back on I think it was Councillor London's question about the 20-mile-an-hour comment. So my understanding of that comment is that it related to whether there should be 20-mile-an-hour limit on Kings Road as opposed to internally within the development that we're looking at. And as Brit has explained, that would be a matter for the County Council as Highway Authority to consider whether they wanted to reduce the speed limit, but they haven't asked for that in relation to a traffic regulation order for this development itself. And I think the fact that we've got a table at the junction onto Kings Road would definitely be a help in terms of signposting drivers to what's going on around those junctions. I think Councillor Smith asked a question as well about the impact of this access in terms of parking permits. I don't have an answer for whether it would affect any parking permits, but when we saw the sort of Google Street View of the site, there was obviously an existing access there already with parking next to the access. So I suspect it's not going to significantly impact on actual parking spaces on the road as they exist at the moment, but I don't have a figure for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Right, back to the committee then. I've got three members. Councillor Waldron, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've read through 22, 23 and 21, and what it actually does, it covers the developer's backside in case anything falls into a sinkhole while they're developing. What actually happens when the developer's left, the houses are sold, and then it falls into a sinkhole? Who takes responsibility for that? Because the way I see it, we're going to get lumbered with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm sure officers will give you a full response on that particular point. Councillor Miller-Jones, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't totally understand the response about the air source heat pumps. You mentioned a condition for air source heat pumps. Is that something, because I agree with other members who have said that those should be standard in all new homes that we're building. There's absolutely no reason to be sort of, using less ecological methods. So is that something that we can put as a condition to say that all these dwellings need to be fuelled using air source heat pumps? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller-Jones. Councillor London, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. It will probably come as no surprise that I'm going to hone in on the issue of the development of the open space management. There is a thin track across the site. It was yellow in the plan that we saw, where the owner could not be found for that. And I'd like to confirm that the management company that is being proposed to look after the public realm for here would legally be allowed to undertake upkeep of the road and parking permits or whatever is needed and required on that stretch of land, given that the owner of that land cannot be found. And what would happen if an owner to that land does come forward in the future and decides, actually, no, this is my land, I don't want to give access over it. So that's the first question. The second question, we've got 26 houses, 7 affordable, which leaves us with 19 houses traditionally that would be funding the management company. We know that highways are not willing to take on the road because of the extensive flood maintenance structures that are underneath the road. So highways have said this is too complex for us and we don't want to take it on because one must assume future financial risk. That financial risk for all of those structures and this entire road seems to be laid on the door of 19 residences, some of which are single occupancy flats. This means that in 30 years' time or so, when these structures need renovating, renewing, refreshing, there's going to be a significant financial load. It is entirely possible that this management company may at that point fail, and I would like to ensure that we have some kind of a condition to find out exactly what happens if this management company fails due to those probably quite extreme financial commitments on 19 houses.
Thank you, Councillor London. Councillor Mildmay White, please.
Thank you. Just a comment, really. There does seem to be an awful lot of things that need to come forward at a later stage. I would have expected a lot of these to be part and parcel of this application. We've got the street lighting issues on the unadopted road. We've got air source heat pumps. We've got electric charging points. And we've got solar panels. Now, I would have expected in this day and age to have seen those items to be part and parcel of an application of this size and complexity, particularly with the apartments. I find it disappointing that all these are going to be coming forward at a later date, and actually this committee won't know about them because that doesn't get fed back to us. It will be officers working with the applicant and making those decisions, part and parcel of as part of the conditions, but also just ongoing items that need to be addressed. And given the amount of time that's taken for this application to come forward, I really would have expected those items to have been included. So I'm disappointed. But on the other hand, I'm pleased to see something being done with Hanchards and Hanchards Yard. My personal feeling is the apartments might be a little bit too much, going across what is a very strange ownership of a road. But they are part of the application and they are needed homes. So I can probably agree with them. But as I say, I'm just disappointed that this isn't a 21st century application. It seems to be we're going backwards rather than moving forwards. So just that comment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mildmay White. Councillor Neal, please.
Thank you, Chair. We've spoke about the turning circle of a refuse vehicle, but we're also acknowledging that there's going to be a food waste collection. We're not in possession of a vehicle to do that because that's a new vehicle that's going to be purchased, new design. So do we know what the dimensions of that vehicle would be and if that would have a turning circle which was greater or lesser than what you've appraised at the moment? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. I've got no other members currently indicating they wish to contribute, so back to officers, please.
So on the point of sustainable construction, air source heat pumps, solar panels and electric vehicle charge points, I think in the submission we have got enough detail that there is a commitment to all those items, and that the detail of where and what is left to a condition. I think that to me is not unreasonable, partly because the goalpost changes regularly as well. We've got applications in where we've approved details, but then applicants come back to include more solar panels or now change heat pumps because of changes to building regulations, etc. So it does not seem unreasonable to accept there is a standard and that will need to be met, and the detail of what they pick from the catalogue of sustainable construction can be submitted by condition. And that was accepted and recommended by the environment team, who would be consulted on the submission of the details, and that's a way to ensure consistency as well. Councillor London then raised the question or query about the access to the open space and in general management of the access if there's a part that isn't owned. So I think that comes from the late paper and the comments raised by Agrarian Finance. However, that is that strip that where we don't
Get the plan up. I'm just going to.
Okay. Right. The strip of land where the ownership is unknown is not within the application side. That is that little bit here between Mill Road, I think it's number 64 and 62. So that gap in Mill Road leading into the garage side, that is the strip of land that is unregistered. So that is somewhat of a problem for the garage side because they are currently maintaining that access and fixing potholes, etc. But that bit of unknown land is not required to access the application side. The application side is accessed only from the north here via King's Road, and it will then be served by the T-junction. Does that make sense? So the public, the open space in the corner here and to the other side of the apartment building, they are accessed off the proposed access road and not through the garage side where
Thank you. Sorry.
Oh, no, okay, that's fine. It's probably pertinent to what Chris has just...
Sorry, I just wanted to confirm it's not the access point to the site, it's the fact that there is a strip of land that I believe if we were to overlay the two plans,
yeah.
The set of flats are to the south of that strip, and that strip of land will exist on the road.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is, for example, somebody decides to park on that road when they shouldn't. The owner decides to come back and says, no, this is mine. Access to those flats are across from north to south, that strip of land. If we do not have knowledge of the ownership of the land, can the management company manage the land?
Yeah. Okay, so in response to that, the yellow strip on the plan here is a private right of access for people accessing the garages at the rear there. It is not a strip of land where the applicant has got no control over or owns it. So the entire side is in the ownership of the applicant, and they do have control over the land, but they have to give right of access for the garages over that land. So if there was someone blocking that road by parking irresponsible, then that would be a civil matter. So that private right of access for the people wanting to use the garage, that would then be impacted. However, we are talking about a 5 metre wide road with a footpath and bollards proposed on the entrances into the garage sides to manage the access into the actual garage sides. Again, that is a civil matter. As it is now, someone could park at the end of that first garage side and prevent people wanting to access the rear. It is a private right of way, but not a strip of land that isn't owned by the applicant. I hope that answers your question, or eases the concern. And then you raised the question about the funding of the maintenance and what happens if something fails. I think that is like with every development. It is something that buyers are aware. Everyone would, like you do when you buy a property, have a solicitor to check these things, and it is a very common thing in locations like this that you have small developments that are not adopted and have private management companies. We will secure a management plan for the soft landscaping and the public open space, and any maintenance will have to be undertaken in accordance with that schedule. So it does not really matter which management company is going to do that. It will be a the planning control is to enforce the maintenance in accordance with the maintenance plan. Yes, please.
So, Chair, just a couple more questions. I think Councillor Waldron asked about, again, the stability of the land and what happens if in 20, 30 years' time buildings collapse. In terms of the Jacqueline Close experience, the council was involved because the council owned the land. It's within any developer's interest and any purchaser of a property's interest to ensure that absolutely everything has been done to ensure that the property is not going to fall down. But it wouldn't be, in terms of if there was an issue, the council isn't involved as a landowner here. Like anywhere in the district, if there was an issue with the property that meant people couldn't live in it, we may have a duty under our housing responsibilities to give someone temporary accommodation. But as the council doesn't own this property, it's obviously for the developer and any house purchasers to ensure due diligence when they are looking to build or to buy a property on the land. And the land stability surveys that have been done and the work that is still to be done should give them that assurance. And then Councillor Neil, you asked a question about what about food waste vehicles and how we're going to accommodate those. Obviously, the council, as a waste authority, as you know, waste collection authority, is working on a new regime moving into the future in simpler recycling. At the moment, we need to deal with applications under the guidance that we have, under the regime that we are currently working to. And we do consult the council's waste team for their views on what we're dealing with at the moment. So in terms of this application, it's considered to be acceptable for the regime we are currently working within. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Miller-Jones, please.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't really still understand fully your answer to my question before about the air source heat pumps. You said that it can be arranged by condition. I wanted to know whether we could actually whether we could request to put in a condition saying they all have to be built with air source heat pumps. And I didn't really understand your response to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller-Jones. Councillor Holder, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Been listening very carefully to the Q&A from the members to the officers and the responses. I did go on the site visit. I've been aware of this site being derelict and locked up and looking pretty unsightly from a road point of view. I take, Councillor Mymo's right point that it's about time this site was bought into a building use. It's just a pity that the rest of the site is just going to remain the same until the land ownership and the obviously subsidence and chalk mine problems are resolved. I'd just like, on your behalf, Chair, to test the recommendation to accept this proposal with the huge amount of conditions that are actually attached to it. If we read every single one of them, it goes on and on and on. So the developer has got a lot to consider, as do our officers, checking that they're following the rules. So I would recommend for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holder. We need a seconder for that, please. Councillor Chung, would you like to speak, Councillor Chung? Okay, Councillor Chung, thank you very much indeed. Right. Are there any further comments? Oh, yes, we need to come back to Councillor Miller-Jones, who's...
Right. To answer the question about air source heat pumps, I personally don't know whether, for example, air source heat pumps are the most sustainable way of heating. There may be potentially other forms. I don't know. It wasn't a stipulation from the environment team that it's got to be air source heat pumps, which is why we haven't included it in a condition as such. But we have got condition 4, which asks for a scheme for the provision and implementation of water, energy and resource efficiency measures during the construction and occupational phase of the development. So this is the condition where we would require them to submit how are you going to heat, where are you going to putting solar panels and any other sustainable construction and occupation measures. And if the electric, the air source heat pump is the most sustainable and most appropriate way of heating in this location, then that is what we would ask for. But yeah, it's not something that was sort of stipulated by the environment team. That there may be, I don't know, more advanced technologies that they may propose instead. Okay.
Councillor Miller-Jones.
One follow-up to that. That all makes sense. Who is it who then decides, who kind of assesses that once they've said, oh, this is what we're planning on doing? Does that go back to the environment team to assess whether that is the most? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you very much, Councillor Miller-Jones. Right, I think we've had final officer responses. There's nobody wishing to queue to speak with me at the moment, so I'm going to test out. It's been proposed to approve the application by Councillor Holder, which is in line with the officer's recommendation, and that's been seconded by Councillor Chung. Could I see a show of hands in favour of approving the application, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. The vote is unanimous and the application is approved.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you very much indeed. Right, we move on to agenda item 6. There's been a request for a short break. Yes. So let's just give it 5 minutes. So it's now 11:12, 11:17 we kick off. Thank you. The agenda item 6, which is the land opposite 3 Coulson Lane, Brandon. And Amy is the presenting case officer. So Amy, when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. So we've got an application here for reserved matter for the details which for access, appearance, landscaping layout and scale for one dwelling. Outline permission was granted back in May 2023 for this application. So we've got the location plan just here. So this is the application site. It's in the housing settlement boundary of Brandon, just off Coulson Lane, and we've got London Road, which runs along here. We've got a public right-of-way that runs along the northwestern side of the application site. And then, although the application site doesn't sit in the conservation area of Brandon, it is visible from the conservation area. So just for ease, I have highlighted the conservation area in red. Here we've got the proposed layout plan. So it is for one dwelling with the access which is existing to be utilised for vehicles and pedestrians onto the site. And here we have the floor plans. So it is 2-storey. This is the ground floor plan on the left-hand side. It's proposed there be a carport on the ground level, and then above is a balcony. And here we have the elevation. So this elevation here is the rear elevation, so the southeast elevation, which would face the rear garden of Rectory Avenue House. This is the northeast elevation. So this is the elevation which would be seen from Coulson Lane. And then I've put on this slide just the materials which are to be used. So we've got a light grey cement fibre boarding to the elevations. That's all the elevations. And then we've got a dark grey double pan tile roof. Moving on now, this is the front elevation. You can see the carport underneath and the balcony above. And then, so that would be seen from the public right-of-way and the orchard to the north and the wide open countryside. And then we've got the southwest elevation, which faces the bingo hall site, which I'll come on to in a moment. And just for clarity, these snippets of the materials that is the colour of them, they're not black and white. We've got the proposed landscape and layout plan here. So there's a small element of soft landscaping proposed in this corner. This would be the driveway, which would be gravel, and the parking area. We've got a small piece of lawn and then paving to the rear of the dwelling. And just to highlight, there is an existing garage, which you'll see in the photographs in a moment, that is to be demolished. So for context, an application was granted planning permission last year for 8 dwellings. It was the old bingo hall site. The development has not started yet, but the bingo hall has been demolished, and this just shows the layout of the approved site for the 8 dwellings. And then we've got the application site just here. So I'm going to show you some photographs of the site, and then I've got a couple of videos as we didn't go out on site on Monday. So this is the view of the site. Hopefully you can see it in the distance from the public right-of-way. So this is Rectory Avenue House here. We've got the garage, which is to be demolished just here. And then the bingo hall site is on the kind of right-hand side. This is me looking towards the application site from the northeastern end of Coulson Lane. So the application site is roughly here, and we've got the countryside and then the orchard just there. This is the existing access, which is to be used for the proposed dwelling, and then the garage, which is to be demolished. So this is viewed from Coulson Lane. And then here I am stood on Coulson Lane with the application site on the right. This is the access. And then I'm looking up towards London Road. This is the host dwelling here, and we've got bungalows on the left-hand side of Coulson Lane. I've got the access behind me in this this photograph, so I'm looking along Coulson Lane towards the northeast. It's roughly where I was stood before when I was looking towards the application site. And this is looking into the application site, and then beyond is the bingo hall site, and then the public right-of-way runs along here. I've got the Rectory Avenue house on my left-hand side. I'm looking down Coulson Lane, and the application site is just here. And then I'm stood in the conservation area looking towards the application site. You can just see it in the distance here with Rectory Avenue house on the left. And then I'm looking to the bingo hall site with the application site beyond. You can just see the garage, which is to be demolished. And that's just a closer view of the site from the bingo hall kind of entrance. I've included a slide here which shows the kind of character of the area and the materials which are used in the area. It's a lot of red brick or light red orange brick along Coulson Lane. We've got some flint properties along London Road in the conservation area. And then we've obviously got Rectory Avenue House, which is the red brick on the front. There are some small elements of boarding to parts of the dwellings. This is along Coulson Lane and this is on London Road, but they are just small elements. So the top of the gable or a projection window there. And then this is the videos. So I'm walking along the public right-of-way here with the bingo hall site on my right-hand side. And you can just see the garage, which is to be demolished just there. And then the dwelling would sit roughly here at 2-storey. And from the plans, it is understood that this wall is to be retained. And then we're looking up towards London Road here and into the access. And then just from the other view, just walking down Coulson Lane, so looking at the application site coming up to us on the left-hand side. I've just put some key comments on here. The majority of the comments raised no objection, so the Highway Authority, Ecology Officer, Environment Team, the Ministry of Defence, subject to conditions. Brandon Town Council supports the application. However, the Conservation Officer has recommended the refusal of the application. particularly regarding the use of the external materials which are proposed, those being the light grey hardy plank, which I showed you in the previous slides, which would be visible from London Road, and therefore it would be visible from the conservation area. So it was stated that the dwelling would be seen as an out-of-keeping addition in the conservation area, which would not preserve or enhance the setting, contrary to both national and local policies. And just to highlight the key policies in terms of the design, so the National Planning Policy Framework and the Local Development Plan policies attach great weight to the importance of good design, expecting new developments to be visually attractive and responding to the local character and reinforcing local distinctiveness. Design that does not demonstrate it has regard to local context and fails to enhance the character, appearance and environmental quality of the area will not be acceptable and should be refused. Both national and local policy also require development to preserve or enhance the character and appearance of a conservation area or its setting and views into, through and out of the conservation area, as well as protecting the character of a public right-of-way. So moving on to why officers are recommending the refusal of the planning application. So I've put the kind of key elevations here on the slide, along with the materials again. So the side elevations visible from Coulson Lane and London Road and the conservation area and public right-of-way would appear particularly poor, with no windows or doors proposed on either of the side elevations, and a shallow and wide gable, which creates a very stark and blank appearance from the public realm. The proposed front and rear elevations also fail to create a coherent and balanced design, with the off-centre fenestration positioning as well as the off-centre projection, which officers believe results in an unbalanced facade. And then the materials do not respect or respond to the palette of materials which are seen either on Coulson Lane or London Road, which are predominantly red brick and flint with slate or pantile roofs, which emphasises the incoherent design of the dwelling. As well as the design of the dwelling, the layout of the site is also considered to poorly relate to the surrounding area. The dwelling has a large footprint that fills most of the plot, which results in a cramped and contrived design, which is then dominated by a gravel parking area. So I've highlighted in this kind of purpley blue colour the kind of parking area, the gravelled area for turning and parking. That doesn't include the carport, which is underneath here. And then the positioning of the dwelling results in a limited amenity space. So they've got this small piece of lawn and then the paving area here, which at points, particularly along this side and where this projection is, measures just 1 metre from the boundary, extending to 2 metres in places. So the proposal, in summary, does not represent good quality design and fails to promote or reinforce local distinctiveness, which is required by policy. The combination of the incoherent and cramped site layout, as well as the balanced appearance due to the poorly proportioned and positioned windows and the projection, as well as the use of inappropriate materials, would lead to an adverse impact upon the character of the area, the character of the public right-of-way and the character of the conservation area. So therefore, it's officers' view that the proposal conflicts with policies DM2, 17, 22 and 44 of the Joint Development Management Policies document, as well as CS5 of the Forest Heath Core Strategy and paragraphs of the MPPF in terms of the conservation area impact and the overall design. So officers are recommending refusal for this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Amy. We've got 3 registered speakers. We've got Councillor Victor Lucanek, who is here as a supporter. He's both a town councillor and an adjacent ward member. We've got Councillor Jill Savage, who is actually the ward member, and we've got Trevor Cronin, and you are the applicant. So, Councillor Canuck, you're first for your 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's no surprise that I'm here to speak in favour of the application. This is a self-build on an individual plot with an individual style which should be encouraged. Apparently, officers are not happy with the grey cladding. It's the fashion at the moment. We've all seen it. It's everywhere. In the London Road, Brandon, we see a large bungalow with grey cladding. Nobody objects. In Gashouse Road, Brandon, we see a large house all in grey. Nobody objects. Also, Chairman, the officers suggest the gables are featureless. You don't put windows in a gable end unless you live in the roof void, and then you'd put dormers in place. Also, a suggestion is made, Mr. Chairman, that it's not in keeping. Well, Colson Lane is a complete kaleidoscope of styles from the 19th century cottages to modern houses. Nobody objects. It's a subjective thing, Mr. Chairman, a matter of taste and a matter of choice. Finally, Mr. Chair, the officers are not happy how the house sits within the building plot, apparently too close to the eastern boundary. Surely, if it works for this gentleman who will develop it, it's fine. He has to live with it. He thinks it'll work all right. And who are we to dictate how he situates his house within his own confines? Mr. Chairman, that concludes my support for the application.
Thank you, Councillor Canuck. Councillor Savage, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I can't really add much to that. Well, apart from the fact that as ward councillor, I've seen no evidence at all or any objections from residents regarding the application, unless there's been late responses, obviously. And secondly, I personally support the application fully. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Savage. And Trevor, you've got your 3 minutes. The timer will start as soon as you speak. Your microphone is now on.
Hi, my name is Trevor Cronin. I am here with my wife Maxine to support the planning application for the site opposite 3 Colson Lane, Brandon. I believe this application aligns with local planning policies and benefits the community despite the recent recommendation for refusal. I will try to address some of the case officer's concerns. This development is to be a self-build. It benefits from a lovely plot which overlooks Staunch Meadow and the orchard. The house will have this lovely view as its facade. It, like most houses of its design, will not have any windows in the gable ends. If it did this would lead to spying on the properties on Colson Lane and into the gardens of those properties proposed in the adjacent new development. The officer has described a low-pitched roof when in fact it is 35 degrees, which is as high, if not higher, than several of the neighbouring properties. The materials chosen for this house will allow it to achieve passive house standards, meaning for heating it will almost be carbon neutral. At a later date, I fully intend to add solar panels. If notes 46, 47 and 67 are added together, we have quite a range of colours and building materials, including some horizontal boarding, suggesting the new build will not be as different as the planning officer would have you believe. It is point 57. Is it really so? We have pan tiles locally, but complain about double pan tiles, which to all except the most discerning look the same. The colour is similar to the colour of the slate tiles locally. See Conservation Officer's Note 68. The conservation area is a mixture of colours and finishes, flint, brick, render cladding. Some are even the same colour as the planned new build. I have photos taken of the surrounding conservation area as proof of this if the committee would like to take a look. Point 58, the outline plan and permission states that the existing access must be used, so to move the building closer to the northwest would create problems for access and turning. As for garden space, the build will have more space than those already passed by the development on the old bingo hall site. Point 62, it will be difficult to view the new build from the conservation area once the bingo hall development has been completed due to the tall nature of the front two blocks being in close proximity and leaving a small gap where it would be visible. Also, Rectory Avenue House and the 6-foot boundary wall will obscure vision. In fact, the best place to view this self-build from would be from the towpath on the far side of the river looking across Staunch Meadow, where it should make a very pleasant picture along with the other properties facing the meadow. Also, I'd just like to add, as far as the landscaping, the gravel was just put on for planning. It's obviously not going to be all gravel.
You have gone over the 3 minutes, Trevor.
Yep.
But thank you very much. Right. Committee debate. Councillor Neil, please.
I was quick off the mark there, weren't I? I found that very interesting, the presentation there, and so much of it I found to be subjective rather than factual. It's all down to personal opinion, personal taste. So much of it was like that. So many things have already been highlighted. The actual presentation itself, it highlighted the variety and mix of houses in the area. From London Road, there's 8 dwellings that are going to be built there. Once they're built, how much will they obscure the vision of the visibility of this development? The gable end, there was mentioned about the gable end not having windows and doors in as being a problem. And in the previous application, they showed house design there, and I made the note that there was a picture of a house with a gable end, no doors, no windows. So again, it highlights how subjective this application is being viewed. And there's the cladding that's being used on other buildings in the area, and has already been highlighted as such a mixed bag. So I find it hard to find refusal. But I'll listen to the debate and vote accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. Councillor London, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. As Councillor Neil said, in such a subjective area where we're talking about the other houses, I'm just wondering what palliative materials have been used for the bingo hall site for those houses there, as we've already brought them up. And I also noted that the size of the admittedly much smaller houses on the bingo hall site on their plot seem to take up a similar percentage of their plot than this house would on its plot, so are equally cramped, if that is the correct word to use.
Thank you, Councillor London. Councillor Millie-Jones, please.
Thank you. Yeah, so I also was having these thoughts about how much is actually visible from London Road. The officer mentioned that although there is cladding on other buildings, it's only small amounts, but my understanding is that you would only be able to see a very small amount of that building from London Road. So I would assume that would be a comparable thing. And yeah, I mean, the whole thing of good design, it is so subjective. We've had things before where there have been issues with conservation officers talking about it looking funny because it's off-centre, and a lot of us have said we actually prefer that sort of asymmetrical design. So it's an absolutely subjective thing. So that was my main thought. I'm not sure sort of who decides what good design is, but I think it is a very subjective matter. Regarding the size of the lawn, I see there's a whole kind of extra space next to it. So presumably, if in the future a resident decided that they wanted more lawn space, they could just increase that space. I don't know if there's any reason why it couldn't be increased, but it looks as though that would be a very easy thing to do. And I also just wanted to clarify, somebody mentioned, I think it was Councillor Savage mentioned that there had been, as far as she knew, no objections. So I just wanted clarification on that, on if there had been any objections. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller-Jones. Councillor Waldron, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've read through this whole thing, and as everybody says, it's subjective. As far as the colour goes, I personally don't like grey, but that's subjective. But you can get Cotswold stone hardy plank, which then becomes yellow. Does that become acceptable? My whole point I'm trying to make here, everything is a matter of taste and subjective. I'd like to propose it for acceptance. Thank you.
Just give me a moment to make a note. So that's approval, which is against officer's recommendation of refusal. Is there a seconder? Councillor Holder, please.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm quite happy to second it. You know, when I was listening to the officer's report and the summary at the end, I was thinking it's almost as if the officer was under instructions to find as many trip hazards for the applicant to jump over, and why he shouldn't be allowed to do it. I thought this council was actually trying to improve the housing stock of the district and not to be obstructive. This whole paper read of obstruction and not help, which is annoying to me, whether you like the colour or not, and it's taking up a big footprint of the site, like an awful lot of houses do on our estates, where people put extensions in. You know, people have got to live, people are wanting to make a living and bring their family up. It would have been useful to support the officer's thoughts if we'd been shown the finishes of the houses yet to be built, because I can't remember that far back when the approval was given for that development. So it would have been nice to see that they were, you know, of the same palette of the surrounding area. I think we get a little bit up ourselves when we're talking about things like that. So I'm quite happy to second it. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just caution against some of the comments there? I mean, I don't for 1 minute believe that Amy was put under any pressure to write this type of report. I think it's a genuine attempt based on principally the conservation officer's view, I would suggest. Councillor Malmay-White, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I do have great sympathy with the officers on this application because half of me actually really agrees with them. And to my taste, we live in a grey country, so I don't like grey houses either. But there we go. And from the point of view of filling the plot, it's always disappointing when there's so little garden space. The applicant has said it wouldn't necessarily all be gravel, so I'm assuming it would be a porous surface. If it's not going to be lawn, we do need a porous surface if all that is going to be hard standing going round to the back of the house. So yes, I agree with the officers to a certain extent, but on the other hand, I'd like to support a self-build, and I can't honestly in my heart see any reason to deny somebody their own particular choice for a house. If they don't want a garden, then that's up to them. So I will be supporting this application, but I do have sympathy and I understand where the officers were coming from on this particular application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Malmay-White. Councillor Chester, please.
Thank you, Chair. Picking up on Councillor Lukaniak's comment on it works for the builder, you also have to factor in amenity for future and subsequent owners, but I accept it works for the developer. The other point I'd like to make here is I can't quite envisage the impact on the conservation area from where it is. I don't think that came across that well, or perhaps I missed it in the presentation. But on balance, I don't have too much of a problem, even though it's contrived on the site, but on balance, I would support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chester. I've got no other members currently indicating they want to speak. I just need a moment, please. Right, Amy's going to come back on a couple of questions that need addressing, and then Rachel will try to clarify the reasons for refusal.
Thank you. So just a couple of points. The materials for the bingo hall site, that hasn't come forward and there's no guarantee that will come forward. So there's potential that you will be able to view it from the conservation area, from that side, but also the Coulson Lane side, which is why we've taken that into consideration. But the materials to be used is a combination of brick with some boarding. So there is some boarding on that development, but obviously not the entire house or houses. In terms of the question from Councillor Miller-Jones regarding the lawn and whether that could be extended, I think it was Councillor Miller-Jones that asked that. We would be conditioning that the parking layout is retained. So no, they couldn't actually extend that because they would then potentially lose their parking and they would have to park elsewhere. So they would have to come in for an application to change that if they wanted to.
She also asked if there were any objections to that.
Oh, sorry. And yes, there were no objections to the application, to confirm. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. And before we go to Rachel, I think I used the word clarification for the refusal. This is clearly clarification for the approval. So just before someone else corrected me.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking before I can advise on the decision-making protocol. I'd like to understand from the proposer or seconder what the reasons for the material considerations are for the recommendation of approval. Thank you.
Thanks. So yes, I mean, I need to go back to Councillor Waldron for your comments on that, and Councillor Holder, please.
Yeah, the site, as said, is contrived, but it's all down to possibly the wrong way of looking at it, but very much my land, I want to build, I've got permission to build. Why should I not build what I want? Now, I don't know what sections all this comes under, but there's a certain amount of intrinsic freedoms in this country, and that to me is one of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waldron. Councillor Holder, would you like to add, please?
No, I did listen to the officer's reasons, and we had it on but why we should be considering refusing it. But as many speakers have said, I just don't accept some of these DMs that we've put in the way. They're not relevant to this application. The stuff about conservation areas, the views, the footprint, all that sort of thing is, you know, an interpretation of those things. And we've heard it in this room, and I've heard it in this room for 20 years or more, an officer's interpretation of a policy where a member will take a different view, and that happens vice versa as well. Don't get me wrong, it does happen the other way. And so that's why I'm taking an alternative view, and why shouldn't I as a member of this committee? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holder. Just hold on, committee.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I think, first of all, we're here to make decisions in relation to the policies of the development plan. The policies that have been listed in the committee report are all relevant policies in the development plan that we need to consider. It certainly wouldn't be good enough to recommend approval on the basis that the applicant should be allowed to do what they think they want for this plot. We have to consider applications in relation to the development plan. But from the debate, I'm picking up two things. One, that members have less of a concern about the impact of this development when viewed from the conservation area, and also that you don't consider that the design will have a harmful impact. So you're considering the same policies, but from what you've said, your views, or certainly members that have spoken, is that the design is not so adverse as to adversely impact on the character of the area or the conservation area for the application to be refused. Thank you. On that basis, Chair, I wouldn't be invoking the decision-making protocol. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Councillor Waldron and Holder, content with the summary from Rachel? Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, well, we've... Yes. Yeah. I've got Councillor Glossop, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I do worry about this, actually. We do have the National Planning Policy Framework, and we do have to work to that, and we do have to consider what is built in an area. And it does say in that in the National Planning Policy Framework that things that are built should relate to what the area is and where they're going to be. And we have heard at the moment about it's quite fashionable at the moment to have this wood cladding and grey colours and grey roofs. Do we want to go back and talk about in the 1970s and one what looks around and says, oh, that's a 70s building? And at the moment, it's the fashion to do this cladding. And I know you're going to say it's subjective, but we do have a national planning policy framework for a reason. So I do think as a committee, we do have to give that some consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glossop. I thought I'd lost you and you're back. Councillor London.
Very much, Chair. I had a comment that I wasn't going to make, but then just as a reply, I thought I would make it in the end, which is that this house is not in the obviously not in the older part of Brandon. It's in a sort of almost a liminal edge that you could draw a loose circle around it. Gashouse Drove, and the thing that strikes me about that area is just how unique every house is within it, and that is the local distinctiveness of that edge of Brandon. And when you're looking at it not in relation to the heritage assets in the centre of Brandon, but in relation to the other more modern buildings from the sort of 40s onwards, I think it adds to that local distinctiveness that the NPPF is talking about for its location rather than the areas that it may be visible from.
Thank you, Councillor London. Sorry, there's a bit of... right. Councillor Marmay-White.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just clarify, because the applicant did say that it wouldn't necessarily all be gravel, can we clarify or make a condition that the turning area and the parking will be a porous surface and not tarmac or, real...
Okay, we'll come back onto that. And Councillor Thorndyke.
Yeah, just an observation, Chair. The only person we've got apparently arguing about this is the Conservation Officer. It means poor Amy's got to take the flak because she's here today. Why is the Conservation Officer not here to defend her decision? Because she's out severely on a limb on this, and it's most unfair to Amy. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Councillor Thorndyke. Right. I think there's a question for you, Amy, and probably a question for you to respond to, Rachel. Thank you.
Just to respond to Councillor Thorndyke, we have an objection from the Conservation Officer, but officers have concerns about the design. This hasn't all stemmed from the objection from the Conservation Officer. If you look at the refusal reason, there's quite a bit in there that doesn't relate to the Conservation Officer's comments. So it's a design-led refusal reason and also relates to amenity as well as impacts on the Conservation Officer's, the conservation area. Councillor Marmay-White, your question about conditioning that the access is porous, as it stands, it's gravel, so it would be porous. And then once built, there is permitted development rights, but that requires there is a limit in terms of what could be not porous. So I think we would have that covered. But before we do anything else, we probably ought to go through the conditions that we would be suggesting if members are voting to approve it today, and then we could have perhaps more of a discussion about conditions after that. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I've got the some draft conditions here. We've got the standard time limit condition. We've got the approved plans condition. We've got some conditions from the Highway Authority, which include the requirement for the access to be improved, that no other part of the development shall be commenced until the existing access has been improved and layout and completed in respects in accordance with the Suffolk County Council Standard Access Drawing DM1, and just ensuring the entrance width is 3 metres. That's prior to commencement. We've got a surfacing condition, which requires the new access to be properly surfaced in a bound material for a minimum or a distance of 5 metres. Then we've got a construction management plan condition, which is another pre-commencement condition, which requires details of the areas and infrastructure to be provided for the manoeuvring and parking of vehicles. That's not the right one. I've mistyped that one, but it's basically to show how the site will be managed during construction, but I'll get the right wording. We've got a drainage condition, which is another pre-commencement condition, which requires details for means to prevent discharge of surface water from the development onto the highway, and how it will be disposed of. And we've got a condition which would prevent or remove permitted development for extensions and outbuildings on the application site. All the other conditions, such as ecological enhancement, soft landscaping, hard landscaping, was all included in the outline permission. So that's why there's only a few conditions.
Thank you very much indeed, Amy. Any comments based on what Amy has just read out? Right, well, in that case, then I think we can go and test out the proposer, Councillor Waldron, and seconder, Councillor Holder, supporting approval of this, and it will not be subject to the protocol. So it's not a minded-to decision, it's a straightforward approval. Could I see a show of hands in favour, please? And could I see a show of hands of those against? Councillor. And is there an abstention? Thank you, Christy.
Sorry about that, Chair, just getting the maths right. So that's 14 votes in favour of the approval, 1 against and 1 abstention, so the application is approved.
Thank you very much indeed. And now we move on to the final agenda item, which is Hatchfield Farm. It was at this point, members, I was going to offer a comfort break, but is everyone content to just move straight into this? Yeah, okay, that's fine. Yes, you must be Jonathan. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Right, Charlotte, you can begin the presentation when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks approval of the reserved matters following outline consent for 400 dwellings at Hatchfield Farm, Fordham Road, Newmarket. The matters in relation to access were agreed at the outline stage, and as such, this application considers appearance, layout, landscaping and scale within the residential parcels. The site is located on the northeast edge of Newmarket. If you look at the location plan on the right, you can see the site in this location here. We have
The laser pointer hasn't appeared just yet, but it's on its way.
I have to go around coming in. That's really weird. It was over. Chair, we're having trouble finding the laser. It's not where we think it should be.
I've got it.
Got it. All right.
Ta-da!
Good job there aren't any cats in the room and they'll be chasing that around the screen.
Right, thank you. So here is the site here. So we have Fordham Road shown in red, which runs north to south along the boundary of the site. And although the site finishes just before it, we do have the green line of the A14, which runs further to the north. The plan on the left shows the residential parcels within these red lines, and that's what's going to be considered today. So you can see this is broken down into 4 separate parcels, and it excludes the open space, the spine road, and other infrastructure which has already been approved. And this will become clearer on the next few slides. I'm sure many of you are aware of the background to this site, but just as a brief reminder, the site was granted outline planning permission for up to 400 houses by the Secretary of State in March 2020. So this application included the means of access to the site, which is shown in 2 places, this access in the northern end and this access to the south. The site was allocated within the Forest Heath Site Allocations Plan 2019, and a master plan was adopted in the same year as informal planning guidance. Subsequent planning applications have also approved the details of these 2 accesses, as shown there, as well as the spine road that runs through the middle of the site, the drainage basins, which you can see at the northern end, an area of public space which surrounds the basins but is also here as more usable public open space, including a children's play area and a multi-use games arena. We've also had an application last year which came to committee, which officers presented, and a site visit was carried out for these 3 additional parcels which provided additional public open space. A design code has also been recently approved for the site, which was one of the conditions on the outline. So this is the development proposed. It's been reorientated so it sits better on the slide, but as you can see, north is shown there to the left. So we have Fordham Road that runs along the bottom of the site here. The plan shows 400 dwellings, and of that, 120 units are affordable. And the breakdown is shown there. So 84 units of affordable rent with 32 shared ownership. That layout plan is broken down on the following few slides. So this is parcel A. So you can see from that wider plan, this is the area when you first enter the site from the roundabout next to Tesco's and McDonald's. This is your main entry point, and this is parcel A here. Fordham Road runs along the bottom, and you can see this white section here is a wide mixed tree belt that provides good screening of the site. We have a foot and cycle path which has already been approved, which runs inside of this landscape buffer along this boundary. And these dwellings have been designed to be outward facing to provide surveillance of that route. The development has been designed to have some lower density housing which fronts onto the spine road. And then we have a more denser development containing more of a range of housing as you get further into the site. If we move on to parcel B, so that's just to the north of the site we just looked at, you can see that landscape buffer along Fordham Road and that foot and cycleway continuing along. We also have a foot and cycle link which runs through from that main spine road and joins up with Fordham Road. This has been built out already. It joins onto a signalised crossing across Fordham Road, as well as a bus stop, all of which are now in place. Albeit the lights aren't operational yet, but they are in place. So similar density-wise, we have a lower density along the spine road with more tighter density inside. You can see we have more use of terraces and semi-detached dwellings. So we move on to parcel C. So this is located along the eastern boundary of the site. Again, we have another wide landscape buffer along that eastern boundary, and we have an area allocated for a primary school site, which sits just the other side of this buffer, as well as that additional area of public open space that we approved last year. And as you can see, we've got these routes already approved through. One of the comments made by Active Travel England was in relation to linking up to these approved routes. We have a slightly odd situation here in that the landowner has retained control of these areas of infrastructure that we've just looked at. So the spine road, the open space, the play area, and the current applicant has taken on these residential parcels, which are shown in the red line. So we do need to secure a non-material amendment just to get these links that you can see shown on the plan to that wider adopted foot and cycleway. And we understand that all parties are happy to do that, and a non-material amendment will be submitted and secure those links. So otherwise, this site has, you could see the drainage basins at the bottom, and this links up with the northern entrance point. We have some apartment buildings shown here along the spine road. And then we have the open space, the play area, multi-use games area, just down in this location here. There are sufficient parking spaces provided over the development. The Suffolk Highway Authority are content that it meets their highway standards, including visitor spaces, and electric vehicle charge points will be provided and have already been secured through the outline permission. So just looking at that last parcel, so this is down at the southern end of the site. So again, we have the entrance point here by the Tesco roundabout. We have a 2-storey apartment block in this bottom corner, and we have lower density housing along that southern boundary. We have another thick landscape feature on that boundary, and we have some existing housing, Hatchfield cottages, which are located in that corner, and then some at the top of this driveway. So the development has been mindful of that. So just as some updates, before the agenda was published, we were still awaiting confirmation from Active Travel England and the Highway Authority. They have both confirmed that they are fully satisfied with the application. The Highway Authority have suggested some conditions, and I have circulated an amended conditions list, which I will go through at the end of this presentation. Active Travel England, we've had quite a lot of discussion with them. Many of the concerns they'd raised were easily amendable, and they have added a couple of additional conditions which are also on that list. The master plan and the design code included the use of 4 different character areas, which are shown as the coloured blocks here. The developer has done an analysis of areas of Newmarket and taken the characteristics and features of these areas and used those to inform these character areas. This is a standard approach used on large residential sites, and it helps to aid legibility and ensure distinctiveness when you have large numbers of houses. So we can see how they've been defined with these different colours, and I'll just take you through those 4 different areas. So this is called the Avenue character area, and it's the area shown on blue on that plan here. So it's development that fronts onto the Spine Road. So you can see it's a medium to low density. The houses are generally detached. They generally have private drives, and they are accessed off a private drive rather than having individual access onto that Spine Road. So we can see from the images here, they're largely red brick. There's some use of render, and they are proposing slate roofs. So that is the character area for that first Spine Road. It also includes the apartment buildings, because they're also within that character area. And you can see a couple of examples there. So the top version is the building that we have on the entrance to the site. And then we have, this is an example of another of the apartment buildings, which is on the northern entranceway. So we move on to the next character area, which is the Hatchfield Drive character area. So it's shown in red on that plan. So this was the lower density dwellings on the southeastern boundary. They have a more formal building line. They are a lot more uniform in pattern. They are largely semi-detached, albeit we do have some examples of detached dwellings. They mainly feature hipped roofs, and they have particular landscaping characteristics, again, to help define those areas. This is named the Stanley Way character area. It's shown in yellow. So it's more of that core of the development. So higher density, a greater housing mix, more attached and terraced dwellings, a bit more variation in roof form. We have some single-storey dwellings here, as well as 2-storey dwellings. And it's just generally more contemporary in character. It includes that linked Fordham Road, which I mentioned earlier, and that's just a photograph to show that in place. And our last character area is shown in green. This is called the Lanes character area. Again, it's higher density. We have a variety of parking solutions, so not necessarily all private driveways. We have frontage parking, parking courts. We have some use of shared surface roads, and more semi-formal planting. The dwellings will all incorporate solar panels, and in most cases they will include air source heat pumps. You will note there are a couple of conditions which ask for the details of those, and they are on your papers. Officers consider the character areas to be well informed and to provide distinctive areas of development, which also reflect the character of Newmarket. The dwellings themselves are well designed and articulated and are considered to provide a high quality environment. So some photographs of the site. I think since members visited last year, probably not a lot has changed, albeit traffic lights and street lights have gone up, which is quite useful to see the layout of it. So you can see the entrance to the site. This is coming from the A14, the image on the left, and this is the roundabout you approach, access is to the left. And again, the image to the right, that's on the entrance to the site. So you can see you've got the crossing point there, and we would have a foot and cycle path going off to the left behind that landscape feature. So this is a view which is taken from that entrance point that looks down the Spine Road. You can see the access point here, which leads into parcel A. Again, you can see that tree belt in the background, and you can see this area here, the cutout through that tree belt, which is where access to the primary school site would be. So this is looking from the opposite direction. So again, that access to the primary school is behind me, and that view is taken. You can see the Tesco's entrance point over in that area, and the play area would be to the right. And this view is taken along that eastern boundary. So we have this adopted foot and cycleway, which is already in place. And it looks across, the drainage basins are in the background. It's quite difficult to see, but this area here is that northern entrance point. I have a couple of videos for you, if you bear with me.
Play the video.
Apologies, you can see that IT is not my strong point today. I'm not sure whether you consider them to be necessary. We've seen some photographs of the site. We have the Spine Road and we have this surrounding cycle path which is in place, but otherwise you can see the remainder of the site is this sort of fairly bare land shortly to be developed. Oh, there we go.
What did you do?
Apologies. So it spans around and that finishes, this is the drainage basins, so then the northern access point would be here. So it just gives you that view across, again, seeing that Spine Road in the middle. My second site visit video is taken from the bottom, so we've entered the site at the bottom entrance. We're looking towards Fordham Road and it should pan around towards the north and come back round to this southern boundary. The developer has helpfully produced some CGIs of the proposed development, so it just gives you an idea about what those houses could look like. So these are some houses on the Hatchfield Drive character area, so they are adjacent to the Spine Road. Again, you can see use of these private drives which are neatly tucked behind this frontage hedging here. And this one, this is the southern entrance to the site, and this is the apartment building that's proposed there. So there have been some amendments to the conditions list since the agenda was published. We have some conditions that have been recommended from the Highway Authority and from Active Travel England, but we do also have the removal of some conditions as they are already produced on the outline planning permission and therefore still bite on this development. So you should have a handout in front of you. I will fairly briefly just whiz through these conditions. So the first one is our standard condition, which just lists the plans that would be approved as part of this development. It is a fairly lengthy list. The next condition requires details of the external materials to be submitted and approved. This was one of the concerns that the Town Council had raised, and officers share this concern that we want to ensure we have high quality materials. So it would be ensuring we have good quality bricks and roofing materials for the site. Again, we have boundary treatments plan. The Town Council again had raised concern about having hedgehog highways. This is something that was included within the master plan, so this condition will just ensure they are secured. The fourth condition relates to the habitats regulations. The site is within the buffer zone of the Devil's Dyke, which is a special conservation area. A lot of discussion was held over that issue at the outline application stage, and officers and Natural England are satisfied with the development, but given that we want to put people off visiting Devil's Dyke, we want to give them alternative routes around the site. So this condition asks for a residents' information pack to direct them to other recreational routes rather than using Devil's Dyke and other surrounding protected sites which are listed in that condition. We have some conditions in relation to cycle storage, making sure that that is sufficient, and making sure access to the cycle parking is practical. Active Travel England also asked for details of how the footways and cycleways will be adequately lit. Several of these are outside of the residential parcels, and so that has already been secured through other applications, but this allows us to consider those more informal routes and whether that's necessary. Condition 7 talks about bin storage areas. The waste team have been involved in the application. They are aware of the upcoming changes and they have ensured that we have sufficient space within this development for the new bins that will be required next year. We have a condition on estate road phasing to be submitted and approved by Highways, and conditions to ensure that car parking spaces are provided prior to occupation and retained for that use. Condition 10 ensures that visibility displays are retained. Condition 11 ensures that the landscaping we have is carried out in the first planting season following commencement of development. And then 12 and 13, our final two conditions, ask for details of air source heat pumps and solar panels. I think particularly with air source heat pumps, we just need to ensure that the correct design is used and they're not likely to cause a noise issue for neighbouring properties. So that is the conditions update. I'll quickly just confirm on there, we have a summary of comments and representations. Newmarket Town Council had originally raised several concerns about the development. I'm pleased to say that many of those have been overcome during the course of the application through amended plans. Several of those relate to areas of open space, play area and the road network which sit outside the scope of this application. And so their remaining concern relates to the lack of open market bungalows within the site. There is a Newmarket neighbourhood plan policy which asks for a range of housing types within a development. Officers are satisfied that we do have a range of housing types. We have 19 affordable bungalows within the site, and we're satisfied with that arrangement. So otherwise, we don't have any objections, subject to conditions. And just my conclusion, which you can see on the screen there, The principle of development has already been established, and the consideration today focuses on the residential parcels only. We consider the development to be in accordance with the outline application, the master plan and the design code, as well as our locally adopted policies. The site will deliver 30% affordable housing, a range of attractive housing types and tenures, and will ensure residents have a good degree of amenity. Sufficient parking and drainage is included, as confirmed by our consultees, and a good landscaping scheme has been submitted to soften the appearance of the development, and officers are satisfied the scheme would not introduce adverse effects on protected sites in accordance with the habitat regulations. So as such, the recommendation is of approval with the conditions as circulated. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Charlotte. We have one registered speaker, that's Jonathan Dixon, and you're the agent for the application. So you've got 3 minutes, Jonathan.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Jonathan Dixon. I'm a planning consultant working at Savills. I'm working on behalf, in this case, of the applicant, Countryside Properties, part of the Vistry Group. Countryside Properties commenced design work on this application back in 2023. Through 2023 and early 2024, 3 rounds of pre-application discussions were held with officers from planning and other departments, as well as consultees such as County Highways and Place Services. These pre-application discussions resulted in various changes to the proposal that are instrumental to your officer being able to present the application to you today and recommend approval. The application was then submitted in April this year, along with the planning performance agreement. As noted, the application is only for the detailed design of the residential parcels, and other matters are addressed or for consideration through other applications. Following revisions to further enhance the quality of the design, such as the bespoke affordable flats fronting Fordham Road that you've just seen, we've reached committee with no objections to any technical or design matters. As noted, the only point not agreed is the Town Councillor's desire for some bungalows specifically for open market sale to meet local demand. However, no evidence of this demand has been provided. There's no requirement in planning policy for bungalows. Bungalows are not raised in pre-application discussions, and your officers support the proposed mix. And again, as mentioned, 19 affordable bungalows are proposed as required. There are no objections from any members of the public or from any other party. As noted, a non-material amendment is required to the strategic landscaping to tie in some of those proposed pedestrian and cycle links. This application has been prepared by the landowner and is ready for submission as soon as this housing layout is approved. The committee report in front of you considers the proposal in the context of national and local planning policy requirements. In each case, the proposal complies. Design guidance in master plans and the outline permission has also been taken into account, and again, the proposal complies. In short, there are no reasons that would warrant refusal. The conditions proposed have been shared by your officer and are agreeable to the applicant. We note that the Council's latest housing trajectory, submitted in support of the emerging local plan, shows 100 homes being delivered on this site each year from this year onwards. In summary, the proposal before you is the result of close working, both prior to and since the submission of the application, between the applicant, officers and consultees. Your officer's overall conclusion is that the development is in compliance with the development plan policies and the MPPF.
Jonathan, can you finish up?
Recommended for approval. As such, I respectfully request that reserved matters approval is granted, such the Countryside can deliver these much needed high quality homes. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, committee, over to interested members. Councillor Chester, please.
Thank you, Chair. On parking spaces, there's obviously enough residential parking spaces. 2 questions there on visitor parking. How many visitor parking spaces are there? Second question is it statutory to supply visitor parking spaces? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chester. Councillor Gloss, please.
Thank you, Chair. We used to always have a section on design out crime, and there used to be a section that the police had been asked. Would that not be part of reserve matters, or have we had that before? Because we used to get those with big applications. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Malmay White, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm particularly pleased to see the affordable housing coming forward with such an interesting mix, the bungalows and the M4 and M2, the two M4 affordable homes. That's really interesting and good to see that developers are addressing the issues that we have regarding different types of housing needed. But I'm intrigued to know, to understand why there's no private sector bungalows coming forward, because I would have thought, presumably it's because the developer thinks they won't sell or they're going to be too expensive. But given that we have an ageing population, it always intrigues me that we don't see more private sector bungalows coming forward. But that's just a question for the developer rather than planning. Otherwise, I'm very happy to move this application.
Yeah. Sorry, can I see a seconder? Councillor London, would you like to speak at this point, Councillor?
I would indeed. I think this is, having spoken to people, I'm the adjacent ward member. I've spoken to many people in Exning who are struggling for their friends and family to find homes near to the people and the communities that they know. So this is a well-needed injection of houses into the local stock.
Thank you, Councillor London. And if my knee doesn't improve, Councillor Malmay White, I might be looking for a single-storey property as well. Councillor Neil, please.
Thank you, Chair. Nice presentation and everything. I'm looking at all the different designs of the houses and all with the garages and that there. But are those garages going to take the modern day car, or are they just a glorified shed? Because if they're not going to take a car, then, we've got to look at the parking spaces, because they're drastically reduced because of the garage not being suitable. I was pleased with the balance of rental and shared housing. I thought that was very commendable. The bungalows, the door width of the bungalows that's going to be produced, would they be a wider door that would cater for disability? Because we're making an assumption that it's the older generation that may well want the bungalows, and they could well need that wider doorway. I'm concerned about the flooding issue. The A14 opposite this development constantly floods now. So with this additional development, what provision is going to be made to make sure that flooding isn't increased? Just a few things that I thought there. And the other thing is, when you're mentioning about a school, it makes me feel very much like this is just a phased development, and so, a similar development of this size is going to follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Neil. Are there any other, can I just tease out, are there any other questions? Because we're very early on, we've got a proposal. And it'd be good if officers could respond if there are any more questions. Councillor London, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I did have a list of questions on this, but the proposal came in earlier than I had anticipated. So I have to admit to personal experience of large developments, having been an officer involved in one over in Cambridgeshire. So I'm aware of there being some issues that are not necessarily obvious at the beginning that can get teased out, and some of these may be more pertinent to other places. So if I drift away, I'm very, very sorry on this. But I'd like to just absolutely confirm, and I know I've had conversations with the officer, but I'd just like to absolutely confirm that we will have pedestrian and cycle permissivity to the outside development from the first occupant. So basically, that first occupant that comes onto the site, wherever they happen to be, if they are, for example, a parent with a child buggy, they will be able to use the pedestrian footpaths from their front door to access the wider Newmarket Road and network without having to use a car. I'd like to also confirm, what we anticipate are the time being, and I know that timing in development is a very, very difficult thing, but to explore what the time will be between that first occupant and the first delivery of open space, especially seeing as we have such concern over places like Devil's Dyke, that we have had applications come to us for the extra dog walking area, things like that. So what we don't want to be in a situation where people are forced to explore the wider area and are forced to go take their dogs to places such as Devil's Dyke because of the phasing of the open space. And finally, I'd just like to confirm whether we are expecting these to come forward with individual management companies or whether there will be a cohesive management company for all open spaces on the site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor London. I won't invite any other comments at this point. I'll go to the officers, please.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of visitor parking spaces, the Suffolk County Council highway parking guidance requires 10% of the parking spaces of a development, an additional 10% to be visitor parking spaces, which this development does have. And we've worked to ensure that they are spread out over the development so they are easily accessible. And just that leads on to garage sizes. And again, garage sizes are included within this parking guidance, and they do have to be a specific size to ensure they can include a modern day vehicle. There are lots of specifics to that policy. If they are adjacent, if parking spaces are adjacent to a wall, they need to be slightly larger. If they need to have a route for a bin to get through, they are slightly larger again. So we do have all those specifications and we are satisfied that they are the correct sizes. The design out crime comment, we do try and engage the police architectural liaison officers from Design Out Crime. They haven't provided comments on this application. They did come to one of our pre-application meetings and they provided advice to the developer at that time. As officers, we generally know the sorts of things that they're looking for in a scheme, and we do tend to have some areas of potential conflict. As planning officers, we want there to be a lot of connectivity within a site. As police officers, they don't want any connectivity. So we do have to sort of balance those concerns. But the option is available to the developer if they want to have their own certification of the development from the Design Out Crime team. In respect of wider doorways, we do have that M43 and M42 standard that we have on some of the houses, and because they are accessible and they enable wheelchair access, then those ones will be designed accordingly. And in respect of flooding, this concern has been raised. The Lead Local Flood Authority have been involved in the application, and they are satisfied that with the drainage basins that we have on site, the swale we have proposed along the Spine Road and areas of permeable paving, they are satisfied that there isn't a flood risk to the site or adjacent areas. Councillor London, in respect of your queries, we do have a condition on the outline planning consent which requires that all dwellings, before they are occupied, they have the roadway and pedestrian walkway that serves them and connects to Fordham Road is developed to binder course or more. The open space areas, we have a condition on the outline again, which has been discharged, which confirms that the open space will all be delivered prior to first occupation. And the landscaping will be done on those areas before that time as well. And in respect of a management company. It's not really part of this application, those wider areas, because they sit outside of the red line for this site. Thank you very much. I think that was everything.
Right, well, I think that's the final officer response. There's nobody indicating they wish to speak, so let me go straight to the proposal, which was for approval, and that was in line with the officer's recommendation, and that was proposed by Councillor Mildmay White and seconded by Councillor London. Can I see a show of hands in favour of that proposal, please? Are there any against? And are there any abstentions? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So that's 15 votes in favour and 1 abstention, so the application is approved.
Thank you very much indeed. That brings an end to the meeting, but members, I just need you to stay behind for 2 minutes. Sorry.